Hey everyone, it is Thursday again and we've got a lovely sunny week here in Cork, although anyone who's in Ireland or probably also in the UK will know that while we've got glorious sunshine during the day, the nights are like icy cold. I'm in fact actually quite enjoying it because it means that you get up, bright sunshine, really chilly. You put on a coat, gloves, and by the time you reach the office, and if you're anywhere with some glass on the side of you, it's just beautiful, just bright, cheerful, huge infusion of vitamin D. So it's really nice weather. So hopefully it doesn't get as cold as they say it's going to get, because apparently there's this Arctic wind that's actually, or the direction of the airflow is changing, so it's coming from the north. So it's looking like it may get a little less pleasant in the next few days, but for now it is lovely and we're indulging in it and enjoying it. So how is the weather where you are? Are you enjoying the spring weather, or are you still kind of deep in the doldrums of winter? We also had our hour change this Sunday morning, which I think kind of helps as well, because it's still bright pretty fast first thing in the morning, but the evenings, I went out for a walk at 8 o'clock yesterday evening and it was still bright, which is lovely. It means that you get your evenings back again. So I'm really enjoying that. So hey Eva, nice to see you. Let me know what your weather's like. Today I have got some things that I want to share with you, because we've been extremely busy behind the scenes, because we've had a combination of new products and also things that we've been working on for several months are coming to fruition, or in other cases we're sharing things that had been exclusive, such as what I've got in my hands here. The winter Seasons Club was the Canucks Shawl. So there was 2 patterns and they were in the gilet yarn. So I've got, let me grab some gilet here. This is gilet here in the 3 colors we've got. There's the Goland, the Pavot Red, and the Sauge, I believe it is, S-A-U-G-E. I'm probably pronouncing that one wrong. And these are all French merino yarn. And what's fascinating, reading the description about them, is, I talk a lot about the way yarns are milled. These apparently are somewhere between a worsted spun and a woolen spun. And it actually feels like that when you're knitting with them, because they're smoother than your typical woolen spun, because woolen spun usually has kind of a fairly rough surface to it. But the beautiful thing about it is it's light and airy and bouncy because there's air trapped. These don't have as rough a surface as you would have with the woolen spun, but when you're knitting with them, they're very squishy and they're very bouncy. So somehow they manage to actually have incorporated the benefits, the way I would see them, of both. You've got the smoothness of the worsted spun, but you've got the light airiness of the woolen spun. So it's a very nice yarn to knit with. And for the Winter Seasons Club, what we knit with this was we took 3 skeins of it and we knit the Canuck Shawl. I've got the 2 of them here. So this one was a partial stitch pattern, because you start over here with just the very tip and you're doing a textured stitch pattern, knit and purl on the right and wrong side. And it comes across with 2 panels as far as this, and then the rest of it is in stockinette stitch. The edge of this then finishes with garter and some picot bind off. So nice and stretchy, a little bit decorative. This one is the full Monty, the full thing. So you start off with this with just a little bit of the stitch pattern at the beginning, and then instead of just doing it once, you keep on going and you keep repeating those stitch patterns across, so that you have a full section of stitch patterns running all the way across. And this one I finished with garter stitch and an I-cord bind off. So kind of a smoother, more subtle edging, but that also has a nice bit of stretch. So in the pattern you actually get all those options. So you've got the textured on one side and the stockinette stitch, and you've got the full textured. Both of those are written in the pattern, and then there's the 2 different bind off options that go in where you can mix and match. Now if you're new to textured stitch patterns, then you may find it very helpful to go for the workshop. So you've got the options available are you can get the yarn kit, which is just the yarn with the bag. And then on checkout, you can add a pattern, or you can add the workshop. And the workshop comes with all of the videos showing you how to read the charts, how to modify as you're going and make little changes as you're going through, so that you can really start to make the shawl your own and understand how the charts work together and how it's modular, each sits on top of each other. So there's, I think, to understand things more thoroughly, the workshops are helpful, because as well as just getting the pattern, you understand how it all fits together in, I suppose, a more cohesive way is the best way of putting it. Now, if you hate charts, do not worry, because there's written directions for everything in there. So all of these are now up on the website. You can get just the gilet yarn if you just want to try the yarn out. You can get the pattern, the workshop, and you can get the shawl kit, the Canuck yarn kit. I will warn you that if you want to try it, don't delay too long, because we got one little bit extra of the pivot because it ran out with the club, but the rest of it is what we had ordered extra from the club, and we're not planning as of right now on reordering this yarn. So what's there is there, so it is a fairly limited release. So if you're thinking about it and would really like to get hold of it, I'd suggest getting it sooner rather than later. It is a nice yarn, and I am definitely looking forward to knitting with it again. I should probably sneak a few of the skeins over to the side for myself so that I can get to go knit with it in the coming months, I think. Because it would actually make a really nice sweater. But I knit the shawl with it, really liked it, but I do have a bit of a craving to do a sweater in that yarn as well. I think it would be delicious, particularly just plain stockinette stitch, just the squishiness of the fabric would be gorgeous. So that was the first release that I wanted to tell you about. And it's always nice when I get to open up something that was exclusive into something that is available to everyone who would like to just jump in for that one project. And the other thing we're doing that has just launched yesterday, in fact, was pre-sale for our short Row Mastercast. I've been talking about this for, I was going to say several weeks, but it's probably several months, because last year when I finished off the masterclass, I was asking what you'd like to hear about next, what subjects would be interesting, and one of the ones that came up over and over again was short rows. Now, I have done a lot with short rows before. I've done other knittle classes in short rows. I've done a book in short row knits. I teach short rows very often to retreats and to tours and to yarn shops and things like that. But it is still something that there's just a huge appetite for short rows. And as I'm discovering, when I'm learning short rows and when I'm teaching short rows, I keep learning the whole time. So I would have started off with a certain set of skills, and every time I use them, I'm kind of discovering new things I can use with them, or in other cases, actually new techniques that I haven't included before. So every time I go to teach them, I start incorporating a lot of those in together and making it a more comprehensive course, really. And other times kind of fusing things together that make sense together. So with this class, and the way I like to teach short rows, is I break it up into two areas. One being just purely the techniques. Okay, what are short rows and how do I create short rows? And so that part of it would work your way through the different types of techniques. So you've got, your wrap and turn, German short rows, Japanese short rows, yarn over short rows, and this time I'm also adding one that's newer to me. I had come across it, but I just hadn't really used it all that much, which is shadow wraps, or sometimes known as twin stitches. So it's just a different short row technique, and this will be the first time in this class that I've kind of been incorporating it in, and I'm teaching a little bit about that. So that is one side of it, that is purely the technical and how do you put them together. But of course, to me, there's no point knowing how to do something if you don't know what you can use it for, because it's like it's one side of the equation. It's very lopsided and you're just looking at one section. So the other part of that for me is, what do you use it for once you've actually learned it? And so that's the second part that is equally important to me, because it's going to drive you on to use the short rows, because you know all of the different things that you can do with them. So the biggest way that I use short rows is in garments. So let me pull something over here. This is a short row garment parcel. It was originally from the Twist Collective, which is no longer now. in operation, but the pattern rights reverted back to me. And this is knit in the round from the bottom up, and then it divides here. And for the shoulder shaping, you want the top of the neck to be higher than the sides, and so you can just use short rows to create that slope on each side. And then in addition to that, the sleeves are knit in the round from the top down. And in order to create this curve for the top of the sleeve, you're using short rows. You're just going up to the top and working back and forth using short rows. So there's just two types of short rows used in there, but that's just kind of a couple of things in garments. You can also use them for bust shaping. You can use them to raise the back of the neck if you're doing a circular yoke. You can create curves in the bottom of a hem, or anywhere within your body really that you want to add extra curves. So they're some of the more usual ways of using short rows in garments. You can also use them, you know, if you're doing unusual construction like I tend to do. If you do yoke side to side, you can use short rows to create the neck and the yoke shaping. So there's, what else? Oh, I know. Short row shawl collars, I think, is the last, probably most common use. I'm sure there's loads of other ways that you may have come across and you want to kind of pull them into, but those ones within garments are the first ones. And then the next one is shaping shawls, or anything with the curve really, where you want to create a curve. You can do side-to-side knits like hats, or like the yoke I was talking about, where you just by adding one wedge on top of another, you can curve the whole thing. And then, of course, in the ultimate of shaping, you can take something like a sock here, and it is basically a knitted tube, except by creating short rows of the toe and short rows of the heel. You change direction from going along like this to up like this, and that's done entirely with short rows. Abria, you're saying you love the Rito Sweater. Yes, I love that one as well, and that again is all of the shape in the bottom of that is all created using short rows. And the more you understand about them, the more you're able to even modify how that shape goes. So if you want to make it deeper or shallower, you can actually go and do that with your short rows. So loads and loads of different things you can actually do with short rows in garments. And I suppose the final thing that I was going to look at in this is something else that I get a lot of questions about, and it's how to substitute short rows. So if you've got a pattern that calls for one type of short rows and you really like a different technique, you need to know how you can substitute one in for another, whether it can just be done directly with pretty much nothing else needed, or if you're going to need to make some tweaks to the pattern as you go through. So that's also going to be in this masterclass, is it'll look at how each of the different types of short rows look in your knitting, and what modifications, if any, you're going to need to how the pattern is knit by you to make sure that it works well for your knitting and you're not going to come up with any surprises. So they're the kind of the overarching themes of what's going to be in the short row masterclass. And as we're going through as well, if you have questions, just you can pop them in the comments, and we'll also have a forum in KnitHub where you can ask any questions as you're going along, so there can be a lot of interaction. But of course the class itself, as with my other teachable classes, it's going to go up where a section, a new video, about 20 minutes or so, like it varies a little obviously, is going to pop up at the start of every week. And there'll be a couple of other lessons that will be tied with swatches that you need to work through, and then ways that you can use it and how to incorporate it into your knitting. So the masterclass is, right now it's on pre-sale, and it's on an early bird special offer. And it's going to be on pre-sale until the 5th of May. And at that point, the price will go back up to the full price. And then from the 5th of May on, every single week, a new lesson is going to be released with a new video and a new set of swatching for you to work through for the next technique. And after it's finished, you get to keep the class and the videos for as long as you want. You can download the videos if you don't have very good internet access and you want to be able to download some perhaps overnight or over a longer period of time, and then you can watch in your own time. If you prefer to have the sound off, they're all going to be fully captioned so that you can also just read through the captions if you don't want the sound on. So I'm trying to, I suppose, make it accessible to people as possible who may not necessarily be able to access technology as easily. So that's the reasoning behind both the videos that people can watch over, and you can take your time, and if you don't have good internet access, you're not relying on a live Zoom Zoom class where it could break down and you're missing the whole class. Or if you learn at a slower pace and you need to watch things several times through, you have it so that you can watch it as many times as you want. I know for myself personally, when I'm looking through something like that, until I reach a point where I'm going to incorporate it into my knitting, I may not actively use that particular technique. That I look over it and I might do the swatch and go, oh, that's really great. And then it won't be until I pull out a pattern that I want to use that I can jump back in and go, oh, that's right, I know where to find that. And then I can pull the technique out. And at that point, it becomes much more useful to me. And that's the same reason that the 3 patterns we have here, the Italian sock, the parcel sweater, and the Canuck shawl, will all be included in the class as well. So that way, if you want to use it straight away, you have the pattern in the class that you can actually just jump in and get started with it, so that you can practice the technique as soon as you learn it. So that's kind of an overview both of the Canuck Shawl and of the masterclass. You can pop into the links and you should be able to find them all in there so that you're able to access them directly. If you have any questions about masterclass or the pattern or the shawl or anything like that, we're going to save this video and you can just pop them up in the comments and we'll answer them for you. So thank you all for joining me this week. It was nice to see your happy faces, and I'll see you again next Thursday.